There are two big hitters when it comes to British cruise lines. In the blue corner we've got P&O, in the red corner it's Cunard. Both flaunt their Britishness, both send one ship a year to sunnier climes and leave the rest of the fleet in Southampton. Both have got die-hard fans that like to make fun of the other. How are they different? How are they the same? Here, ladies and gentlemen, we go. If you are watching this, then you're either already cruise curious and you're investigating before you make your first booking, or you're one of the cult and you love ships. Cunard is probably doing more harm than good in terms of winning over the civilians. Rightly or wrongly, the general public think that Cunard equals Titanic. Old-fashioned, for old people, stuffy and dull. And you might die. P&O is appealing to regular cruisers and first-timers, bringing in families while still having ships for people that hate kids, peaceful people, party people, as well as ships of all sizes. Round 1 is a P&O win. Truthfully, on 7 nights or more, you've got a pretty similar mix. Hyacinths on Cunard will throw the Butlins at sea jab at P&O, but at the same time, Anne's on P&O, see my Arcadia review, will make similar complaints about the new P&O, whilst regaling you with tales about the glory years. The vast majority are just normal human people. A bit older on Cunard, a bit younger on P&O, and just like any group, there'll be some that you get along with and some that you don't. Big P&Os have a lot of feral kids and irresponsible parents, but that's mainly during school holidays, which are easy to avoid if you want to, and as far as I can tell, they set up camp in the Skydome early in the morning, they stay there till late, then they make a nuisance of themselves in the clubhouse, whilst the staff pretend they can't see them and don't enforce the rules about no kids after 9 PM. Now I was born old, and now I'm 42 years older than that. So I like fixed dining at a large shed table, and I've always been able to pass the time comfortably chit-chatting with whomever turned up on both lines. If you're on a short cruise, 2, 3 or 4 nights, then the difference is a bit more pronounced. P&O attracts more groups, hen and stag do's and younger people celebrating birthdays. Cunard is more of the same but just for fewer nights. One offers a booze cruise, the other offers a snooze cruise. You can't really say that one's better or worse than the other, just know what it is that you're booking. Having said that, I've got no friends, I don't drink, and I hate it when people don't follow the rules. So I'm going to say that this is a Cunard win, despite what common sense might tell you. Now, I'm not going to get bogged down with all the cruise critic nonsense about rights and wrongs and are jeans allowed on Cunard and all of that. I'm going to go on facts. My opinion, which is even better than facts, and my experience on both lines. I'm not really all that bothered what the dress code on the ship is, 100% casual, 100% formal, or any mix in between. But I do like people to follow the rules. P&O is generally smart casual with 1 or 2 formal nights a week. Cunard is generally smart with 2 or 3 formal nights a week. We all know before we board what the dress code is, so book the ship that you want to go on. Don't book QM2 and then turn up at the main dining room on formal night in your Aerosmith T-shirt and sandals, kicking off with the staff. If you do, well, you were the idiot, not Cunard. That said, a few thousand pensioners bobbing around in the ocean wearing fancy dress on masquerade night or roaring 20s is fluffing madness, and in this case, Cunard is the idiot. Fortunately, normal black tie is also fine on these occasions, which is what I wear, and by golly I look delicious. Whilst cruise critic forums are full of people moaning about dress codes, with Hyacinths wrongly saying that jeans are never allowed and Steve-O declaring that it's his holiday, his rules, the fact is that the vast majority of people follow the code of the day. The perception is that Cunard is fancy because it insists on so many nights in a dinner suit. The reality is that a dinner suit can be had for less than a trendy hoodie. It's not about the money. With all other things being equal, I'm going to have to give round 3 to P&O, because pensioners dressed as Al Capone or liver-spotted old grandmas thinking they're in Eyes Wide Shut are never inflicted upon me on Ventura. P&O ships are adorned with the Union flag. Well, I'm going to call it the Union Jack because it is on a ship. First impressions of a P&O ship can't help but include mental images of the local Wetherspoons, houses on an estate with a washing machine in the garden, probably with a can of beer on top and a man in a vest stood beside it. Ironically, also, Middle Englanders using the phrase boat people. Cunard has a very colonial vibe. There's a lot of dark wood, old white men in suits and Asian staff, who a small and dreadful section of the passengers treat as if they're not in fact people just doing a job, but they're slaves. This guy, for example, a horrible man that I caught on Queen Victoria. Having said that, for every Cunard Farage, there's a P&O Cruella. And in the end, like the people they're unpleasant to, they are in a minority. The guests on both these lines have their faults, but I'm pleased to say that in my experience at least, and having asked guys I know who still work on board, racism is pretty rare, and it's still rare enough to be shocking. This round is a draw. This is a tricky one. Firstly, P&O doesn't have an equivalent of grills, so we'll sit in the cheap seats and compare the normal options. Secondly, P&O has a real identity crisis and is really two separate lines operating under one name. But no matter which of the P&O lines we're talking about, the main dining room food in Cunard Britannia restaurant is easily superior. P&O main dining room food is okay to quite good. Cunard main dining room food is quite to really good. The Cunard buffet is also a long-legged man's step up from P&O. There's a better selection, the food is higher quality, and if you're lucky then a crazy old Indian yoga instructor will sit beside you and pitch you an arranged marriage with a very pretty young lady from Delhi. See my QM2 review if you want an invitation to the wedding. P&O also has the keys. This is included in the fare, and if we include it as a second buffet equivalent, it kicks P&O's offering up a bit with fish and chips, a variety of burgers, noodles, a roast dinner and a Yorkshire pudding like a British burrito. But it's only available on Iona and Avia, the big ships on the family fun side of P&O's split personality. When it comes to speciality dining, Cunard's Veranda is what P&O's Epicurean is pretending to be. I couldn't get a booking in the steakhouse last time I was on P&O. I don't really like Indian food, so I didn't go to Sindhu, but that does always get rave reviews. Cunard's pop-up restaurants are a bit hit and miss, regular viewers will know what I mean. But they still get the nod over P&O's pop-ups because they do a much better job of hiding the fact that you're still in a bit of the buffet that's been tarted up for the evening. The coffee has to be paid for in the coffee shop on either line, but on Cunard the snacks are included. On P&O, it's not even certain that it'll be open. Cunard's afternoon tea is on the slide for sure, but it's still a bit of an experience with the parade of teapots and bingo wings flapping around, and they don't serve whatever this bullskip is that takes the place of cream on P&O. Whichever way you look at it, Cunard takes this round. What a question! There is a much bigger variety in the P&O fleet, starting with Aurora, the smallest and oldest ship, that's the one I worked on, which is a real favourite for many people. Through Arcadia, which loser cruisers like myself know has a Cunard-shaped funnel because it was originally going to be Queen Victoria. Then there's the middle-sized and middle-of-the-road ships, Ventura, Azura, Fleet's flagship Britannia, all the way through to the great big family beasts, Iona and Avia. I didn't have the best time on Iona, but the actual ship, if we ignore the horrible chrome railings and the airport lounge-style atrium, is pretty great. Cunard's got a smaller fleet, spearheaded by QM2, which a particularly tedious section of the passenger list will tell you it isn't a cruise ship, followed by two smaller QM2 tribute acts in Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth, and now Queen Anne, the youngest, trendiest queen, aimed at getting younger people on side. They probably should have called that Beatrice or Eugenie. This is a really tough call. For me, QM2 just on its own beats any fleet from any line, and I love the traditional decor and the art deco of Cunard. But if P&O and Cunard had a fight, well, P&O's gang of bikers would batter Cunard's 4 dressage enthusiasts. It sort of hurts me to say it, but P&O takes this round. Interesting. Despite what the advertising tells us, in my experience, and I have been on QM2 quite a lot, both lines have the same number of planetariums. 0. Illuminations is a lovely place to watch an insight lecture or a movie on QM2, nicer than the main theatre, which is fine but unremarkable. QV and presumably QE theatre is really lovely, whereas Anne's theatre, it's a bit council arts centre. On P&O you've got a real mixture of theatre venues, from Aurora's Curzon, which is cute and traditional, Arcadia's Palladium, which is trendier than you'd expect, through to headliners on Iona, which has all the bells and whistles but is designed quite poorly, with an enormous tech box limiting the view from a lot of the higher seats. When it comes to the shows, Cunard do have a ship's company, but they always seem like they don't want to wear them out. You need to look out for them in the Daily Planner if you want to see a show. The rest of the time, Cunard's main shows are very small in stature for the main entertainment of the day, and they'll often be one man telling jokes or singing or doing magic tricks. P&O shows tend to be a bit more showish, and I'd give the ship's company productions the edge. And, quite importantly, they are more frequent. I never think one person on the stage should be the show, but both lines do it now and then. On my last trip on Cunard, Kevorkian was the show on 2 nights out of 4. Dear oh dear. When I was on Iona, the Take That show was cancelled repeatedly, and sadly one night Manuel Martinez was moved from his usual spot in the bar to the theatre stage. If you happen to be deaf and blind, then you might enjoy these acts. For everyone else, it's safe to say that both lines have no quality control when it comes to comedians. Cunard has a good programme of speakers doing lectures during the day. Not everything is for everyone, but you will find something. On my last trip, there was a very intelligent but very boring woman doing talks about plastic surgery, a prison warden telling us about banging people up, and Dorian from Birds of a Feather, who was surprisingly quite fun. P&O doesn't have an equivalent, but they do have something that Cunard don't have: the dome shows. And the only way I can really explain what the dome shows are is this. You know, at Christmas, when the family gets together and at some point you notice that all the little kids have been suspiciously quiet in the other room for hours, then they appear and make you watch the show that they've been rehearsing. Well, that's what the dome shows are like. There's noise and supposedly some kind of stories being told, and it goes on for far longer than is necessary, and everyone involved is relieved when it's over. Both lines have a decent roster of live music, solos and duos in various bars and venues doing covers. Occasionally they get carried away and slip in own stuff, which makes everyone groan in the same way that a stadium does when Bon Jovi says, "Now one from the new album," and all we want is Bad Medicine. P&O has a busker doing the rounds, whereas Cunard has a harpist or a Ukrainian strings trio. Now, a lot of Cunard guests like to think that they're more the strings trio type, and they were incredible. But the theatre was, 10% full when they were performing? You just try and get a seat when it's karaoke time in the Golden Lion. The same applies to karaoke time on P&O, just with far less denial when telling holiday tales to friends on land. When it comes to movie time, P&O is miles ahead. Cunard will stick a movie on in the theatre, Illuminations on QM2, which to be fair is rocking, or in the Bright Light Society on Queen Anne, which is a cabaret lounge. A couple of P&O ships make do with pop-up cinema too, but Aurora has a dedicated cinema, as does Arcadia, which also shows movies in the Globe Cabaret Bar. Arvia's got a 3-screener, Iona's got a 4-screener, and a couple of ships borrow the C-screen format from Princess and let you wrap up in a blanket for an outdoor movie by the pool. Both lines are a mixed bag if you want to have a quiet night in front of the TV. Anne and Elizabeth have video on demand, as do Iona and Arvia. The rest of the ships on both lines have TVs from 1990 with channels to match, and either way you're paying extra for room service. For me, Cunard wins the entertainment battle, but it's really subjective, and I suspect that most people would give it to P&O. That said, I value my opinion at the very least equal with everyone else in the world, so I'm going to say this round's even. I think both P&O and Cunard passengers would always assume that P&O is going to be the cheaper option. In reality, there's not really enough in it to care either way. I was on Arcadia in May and QM2 in June. Even with £100 of speciality dining and gratuities paid extra on QM2, the Cunard trip was over £60 per night cheaper. I'm going to the fjords on QM2 in May in a Seaview cabin. It would cost me £9 more to get an inside cabin on Britannia. Cunard is surprisingly the bargain hunter's choice. Well, it's time to go to the judges' scorecards, and after 8 rounds of action, Cunard pick up wins for food, passenger mix and, most surprisingly, value for money. P&O get the nod for ship choice, image and, would you believe it, dress code. With 2 rounds even, that leaves us with a draw. That's not to say that Cunard and P&O are the same, just that neither's better than the other. As always, book the right ship for you and you'll have a rocking time. Unless you're on QM2, which famously does not rock. Another cruise tube will be along this time next week, but if you miss me in the meantime then take a look at my other videos, they are brilliant. If you think you've spotted a few punches that I missed, let me know in the comments and I'll tell you why you're wrong. Cunard versus P&O, done.